Hmm. Oh, I didn't see you there. Sorry. Oh, wow. Well, today we're actually going to discuss milk, but not in the way you think. We are going to discuss milk as in what is it, where does it come from, what are the different types, where can you get those different types, who can drink milk, how do they process it, and maybe a few other things. Let's dive in. Now, hopping into our slides, the first thing we're going to discuss is what are the different types of milk. Because when we say milk, oftentimes we just think cows, right? But there's a variety of different types and categories of milk. So looking to this chart, consider this. First off, there's different classifications or terminology on milk containers. One example would be raw milk. Raw milk is milk that has not been pasteurized. To pasteurize means basically to boil, to destroy the bacteria within the milk. Next is whole milk. This is usually the red cap at the grocery store. Whole milk is milk that contains at least 3% or 3.25% milk fat. There is 2%, which is milk that contains 2% milk fat, and 1% for 1% milk fat. Now, if a milk jug or bottle from a cow says homo or homogenized, that simply means that the fat in the milk has been broken up and smoothed out to form a more creamy milk. If a milk says skim, that usually means fat-free or the lowest amount of fat. Most people, when drinking skim milk compared to whole milk or 2%, will say it is watery, but it does not have any creaminess. And that is, again, because the fat has been removed. Now, of course, there is chocolate milk or strawberry milk. You have buttermilk, which is not literally what it sounds like. What this is a milk where bacteria cultures have been added to it, and it gives it a more tangy, thick, rich flavor that's good for baking items such as pancakes or cake. Next, there is basically filtered milk, which is an extra filtration that can remove microorganisms from sensitive individuals, people who have perhaps medical circumstances. Next is organic, and we're going to dive into what organic foods mean in a later lesson. But essentially, this means the cows were fed an organically grown set of crops, so foods that lack fertilizers, pesticides, hormones, steroids, that are not naturally occurring in the world. Next is the lactose-free. Lactose is basically we'll call it a sugar in the milk. And this is a milk where they place an enzyme in the milk to allow people to drink the milk and absorb it into their body without any side effects. Next is evaporated milk, which is milk that is basically powder, but then you may add a fluid such as water to it to reconstitute the milk to make it whole again and make it taste like milk. Also, there are sweetened and condensed milk, which is good for baking. It's just a thicker milk. And then you have other plant-based alternatives to milk, basically fluids that you can derive from processing of different plant products, such as soy, almonds, rice. Now, diving specifically into this one, the homogenized milk, this machine here is a homogenizer. What this machine does is it takes the milk that was from a cow and it strains it through very small holes at high pressure, and it strains and thins out the milk. It takes the fat cells and breaks them up into smaller units. That will allow for it to not re-separate after it has been processed and distributed to the grocery store. Here's an example of milk that has separated. Ignore the time frames. What I want you to see is that mixed homogenized milk stays separated, generally speaking. Milk that has not been homogenized or milk that has gone bad can separate like this, especially if it is naturally from the cow and it has been left just to wait. Now, the top layer of milk that separates is called casein. This is the slow-absorbing protein. And then there is whey protein, which is the clear part of the fluid of milk. This is a more fast-absorbing protein. When we discuss protein powders and protein shakes, we will absorb, or really we will discuss the absorption rate of this type of protein. Now, moving on, again, proteins constitute different parts. They are mostly water, but whole milk is still 13% solid. Now the actual milk solids constitute about a third: protein, fat, and lactose, which is milk sugar. Within the protein itself, as we will discuss in a future video, about 80% of milk protein is casein, or the a little bit slower digesting protein. Now, when it comes to cow milk, I specifically want to share with you the stereotypes that exist within cow milk, as if cows are all free-ranging and they're happy and they're wild. Nothing, honestly, could be further from the truth. Unfortunately, they are stored in various facilities, such as this one, and I'm not going to name any names. However, this is actually a pretty clean, common place. You can see the cows are linked up to devices that keep them in. Their food and water is below, and you can see that there are pumping devices that can be attached to the udders of the cows as they see fit. This is more particularly a beef farm, but this is generally the conditions that you'll find for cow. Now, I do want to discuss briefly, without getting too deep into the chemistry aspect of it, the lactose intolerance of the people of this world. In short, lactose, or milk sugar, can be broken down in the body by this, lactase. And this is basically a component that your body can create, and then it breaks up lactose into glucose and galactose. And then the body processes it and turns it into standard sugar, and it goes into your blood. But many people do not have lactase. Many people do not have lactase. And this is what is known as lactose intolerance. This chart color codes the generalized worldwide prevalence of lactose intolerance. Now, what this would generally indicate is that the majority of non-Caucasian countries tend to be lactose intolerant, which is an interesting concept. Now, while yes, we are not baby cows, we are not designed to need this particular product, our bodies are designed generally to digest it without side effects. But as you can see, especially with this level of prevalence, there are many nationalities of individuals that simply cannot handle lactose, especially as an adult. In a general sense, from a health and wellness perspective, I would say it's not necessarily for the diet, not just for health reasons, not just for digestive reasons, but for any reason. While there are benefits to all types of animal products, the risk does not outweigh the reward. There are plenty of substitutes that we discussed on the original page. And when we get into the protein unit, we will definitely discuss those deeply. Now, many people might say, oh, I should drink milk because milk contains calcium, and calcium will result in me having strong bones. Remember the calcium slides and preventing osteoporosis? Well, here's a very simple schematic illustrating that the rate of dairy consumption juxtaposed to osteoporosis prevalence, or the amount of weakening chronically of the bones. These two things are directly correlated to consumption. The more milk you drink, the more prevalent or the more common osteoporosis is. You would think it's the opposite if milk is super important. Now, going into a more detailed summary, this YouTuber, Mike the Vegan, gives a solid 10-minute summary of milk. There is also another individual who gives a response to a few of his videos, and then Mike also responds to this one, but he takes about 20 minutes. For those of you that are in my 5th-hour class, I would like for you to review this one, and then go to the worksheet and specifically itemize what it is that you've taken from this, because these specific lessons are more relatable to certain populations within this class. Some of you consume milk daily. Some of you cannot consume milk since your childhood. Some of you just do not drink it out of the culture of your household norms. But based on some of the science that I've presented to you, based on the things that Mike has said in his YouTube channel, what have you taken from this? Please go to that form, fill that out, and let's talk about it. Take care.